Peace everyone, Unmask Art here. Welcome back to the colored pencil tutorial. I hope that you are all having a lovely day. We are going to be filling in the paint over here. That's where I decided to focus. Yesterday we did the indicator lights and the grill and everything, and that looks really cool. But now it's time to finish filling in the rest of the car, really. So I got the normal colors. I'm going to start off with the 1063. And let's just jump right into it. So this part is a little swirly, a little complex in comparison to the other sections of the car. So definitely take your time here. I'm just going to gradually start filling in this back end a little bit. And as usual, any questions you may have, I am more than happy to answer. Hey there, Anushka, Greg, Dottie, Claire, Diane, Cherry, Liz, Barbara. Good to see all of you. I tried to keep the line art for this part relatively simple in comparison to all the stuff that's actually going on. You can see the reflection. You can see the back end of like a Nova and another white car or something being reflected. And the reason I didn't draw those in very precisely in the line art is because, well, first off, I don't really want to draw more cars in the reflection of my car. So I'm actually going to manipulate the shapes just a tiny bit so that they don't appear to be so much of a car. And so that's one reason. All right, this little part right here is a pure white highlight. And then you can see the door handle, but it's very difficult to get details that small. This darker swirl of gray here. And then you have the crease, or not necessarily the crease. Can the reflections just be left out altogether? Yes, indeed, they can. That's sort of what I'm going to do. What you'll do here is there's some green being reflected because in the distance there's some trees, there's some grass, what looks like the guardrail for either a road or a bridge. Then you can see the change in the surface, which I imagine is probably a gravel parking lot. And then you can see two reflections of a white car and a gray car. And so, excuse me, essentially what you'll do is instead of focusing on the shapes of the objects, pay attention to how the horizontal lines move across the surface of the car itself, of this actual car, not the reflection of the cars. Because that horizontal shape is what maps out the surface of this actual car, the way it's bending the light. A good example is like the way this curves here. You can see this curve. The car is not perfectly smooth. There's some ripples in it, which is what's causing this causing these curls to happen. This isn't the shape of the car actually. And so it's just those really, really small, subtle imperfections of the surface of the car that changes what would otherwise just be perfectly straight horizontal lines to make them curvy and abnormal. So what you would do is you would follow those same curves in the picture that's being reflected in the door, and then just alter the vertical shapes that the horizontal lines create. So instead of, like, a good example is like you can see a tire of one of the cars like right here. Instead of putting that tire there, just ignore it completely and instead focus on the gravel parking lot instead. So for this section right here, this rear quarter panel, I'm going to continue using this color, and I'll sort of talk you through my mindset for removing the reflections of that white car that you can see sort of right in this area. Right now I'm just working around those pure white highlights. Oh, hey there, Mima. So good to see you. I'm glad you were able to pop in. Yeah, I was looking for you yesterday. I was wondering if you're gonna make it for yesterday's stream. I appreciate you taking the time. I really enjoyed your live stream the other day, and you'll be live streaming later today, if I'm not mistaken. So everyone that is in chat, go check out Mima's live stream later today. She's working on a really lovely portrait, nice Halloween, Day of the Dead portrait, colored pencil portrait, by the way, just to be clear. So anyway, you see these shapes, you can see the border for the roadway, sort of that that bridge, and then you can see that it dips down like this and then curls. So it sort of creates this shape. You can see the crease where the fender flare comes up and meets that dip, sort of that. And you get some darker shapes in there. And then for the white car, I'm just going to completely ignore the white car. So this little section right here is going to be sort of that greenish grass that is being reflected. This part right here is the gravel parking lot, and that gravel parking lot comes all the way up to here, pretty much. And then I'll just finish filling in the rest of the shape. Yeah, I would say taking the reference photo and then making alterations throughout the process is something that you should always look to do, because there's very rarely will you find a photograph that everything looks perfect. And in the case of this project here, I'd say that pretty far from perfect. with some of the things that are being reflected in the car. But at the same time, there's reference photos that are just too perfect. And those make less interesting pieces of work as well. So you have to find that balance where you change things that look a little off, and then you also avoid things to look too perfect, because that makes for relatively boring work to look at. A really good example is studio portraits. Studio portraits that have a light setup specific to removing shadows on the person's face makes for very, very uneventful photos. Good morning, Ozzy. There's this little shape here. Now this lighter gray area on the doors is the reflection of the concrete that the car is sitting on. If I'm not mistaken, I did, for the reference photo is unaltered, but the line art does not have the parking garage structure that this car is actually sitting in, simply because I didn't think it looked very good, so I wanted to isolate the car from its environment. Oh, hey there, John. Thank you. I'm glad you were able to get here a little bit earlier. I've isolated this white line here for that separation in the door jamb. And I'll continue that process on this side as well. And I'm just sort of chopping these parts of the car up into easier pieces. I'm using those distinct lines to separate one area from the next. It can be very, very helpful for simplifying. You guys know how I like to simplify things. No need to make the coloring process more difficult. So anytime you can find little tiny things to simplify, the better off you'll be. And now these two areas here is where all the reflection is. You have the gravel, you have the cars being reflected, and then the bridge. So like I said about following the horizontal lines to map out the structure of the actual car, a good example is with this, actually there's one more line here, very faint line, but this is actually the front fender where it meets the door. But you have the bridge or the guardrail, and it sort of comes right through here, and it dips a little bit, and then it raises up and curls kind of the other way. So it has this shape, and then again it dips, and then it lifts up here in the back, and you can see that this little blank spot is that part of the bridge on the rear quarter panel. So you just follow that and they sort of meet the two puzzle pieces together. So that is the shine, I guess, of the surface of the actual car, whereas I've removed the objects in the reflection. And so I'll continue that. Here's the bottom part. And I'm just loosely sketching it in with this color. And then we have this structure here from one of the pillars of the parking garage. So this top part, now that I'm seeing it, this top part is actually the reflection of the roof of the parking garage. So we have this sort of pillar shape being stretched along this surface here, very curved, and then it comes down right here. Do you see this? You see this shape here in the reference? And then just below the bridge, you have the gravel. And I'm just going, even though you can't see the edge of the gravel, you should be able to know that it's going to have the same curvature or a very similar curvature to the bridge. And then so this will be gravel. This will be the roof, and this will be the pillar. So I'm just going to fill in those shapes. And I'm not concerned about the value variation because that's something that you can add in later layers. Good morning. Fed up? Oh, I didn't, John, I didn't even realize that was your picture in Discord. Um, so less perfect shapes. So your mountains sort of have the stereotypical like triangular peak for the mountains. What I would suggest doing with your mountains is chop off the top and make the tops more like the shape of what you would imagine a rock being. There are mountains that have like very distinct peaks like that, but not as symmetrically perfect as you have them drawn in your picture there. Just look at a reference of mountains. I'm not sure if you drew that from your imagination purely or not, but yeah, just they were a little bit too cut out. If my description of these shapes here in the doors was a little bit confusing, let me know. I will try to clarify anything that might not be obvious. But hopefully you can see how I've created these shapes. Now I'm just using this same color to just fill them in. Down here is very dark. Oh, hey there, Cece. Right, let's see. There's some shapes up here. This one's a little bit darker. This one's darker. This one's darker. Yeah, there's some stuff going on here. I think I'll leave that blank. I'm going to leave the mirror blank for now. I'm going to work around the mirror and just focus on the paint. Let's go ahead and switch up the colors. So I'm going to grab black. A little bit of the door jambs that I want to get put in here. These thin black lines. Also this part of the wheel well. It's not quite black, but I think black is going to be a good base layer. Oh no, I think the courier is at the door. You'll have to forgive me. I'll be right back. Yeah, it is the courier. He's headed up to my flat, so he'll be ringing the doorbell soon. This is the fourth courier today. So much so much things coming. They've been pretty good at not coming during my live streams, but I knew it was bound to happen. Still using the black, by the way, just so you know. Be right back. All right, I'm back. Sorry again about that. You're very intrigued that I map out my highlights. Yeah, when it comes to objects like this, it's very helpful to sort of break it up into things based on value is what I tend to do. I break it up into what I usually refer to as like puzzle pieces for the sake of making the process of filling in the actual drawing easier. Because the one property with colored pencils is that covering the paper is what takes the most amount of time. And in the process of coloring the paper, you're sort of faced with what I call the ugly stage. It's really quite impossible to color something with colored pencils and it not cross into this realm of just looking really awful before it looks good. And if you break the drawing up into a process of shorter or smaller, almost puzzle pieces, it feels a little bit better than trying to color the whole thing all at once. Because the ugly stage is sort of compartmentalized. And anytime you're doing something like really shiny like this, it's just absolutely essential because it also lets you control your value placement. So this is sort of a particular subject that has that really shiny quality that I would sort of chop the highlights this way. Like for instance, if the highlights were a gradient, then I wouldn't necessarily have these hard lines and then be placing it later on. I would just add it to the gradient shape. And so it'd be just part of the coloring process. Like skin. Skin is a good example of where I wouldn't chop off the highlights like this. Unless the skin was like wet or oily and it had those very stark bright highlights reflecting off them. So it lot of variables in determining whether or not I kind of isolate the highlights. What sharpener do I use for my colored pencils? I use Jaguar electric sharpener. But since I keep getting this question, like every stream, um, so I have to reiterate that I don't think that there's something inherently special about my sharpener. It's just that it's an electric sharpener. It's a good quality electric sharpener. And I am certain that there exist different brands that are just as good and if not even better. Trying to solve this puzzle of my line art here. I think that's good for the black. Go ahead and grab 1065 now. I'm going to fill in some of these darker shapes that I avoided. I'm just going to treat this whole part up here a darker shape. I'll leave this little blank spot for that highlight that creeps in there. These details, they're starting to get so small that the precision is becoming less relevant. You can only create details so small based on the scale of your drawing. So my drawing isn't that large. I must compensate for the loss of details by just focusing on the important features. And in this case, the important feature is a couple little specks of highlights. Using a glove, I would never wear a glove. My hands would get sweaty and that would bother me. I've seen a couple artists use like fingerless gloves while drawing. Um, I can't think of any benefit to doing that other than possibly the idea that you're not smearing your drawing, which I don't think would be the case at all because the glove would just act like a blender. So I don't think it would necessarily not prevent you from smudging anything. but I wouldn't find it very comfortable either to draw with a glove on. That's probably why I don't really like the digital tablets, because you almost are required to wear one of those goofy looking gloves, and I find them irritating. Last thing I want to be is uncomfortable while I'm trying to relax and draw. So probably won't ever catch me wearing a glove. I think I've seen a few artists do some ballpoint pen drawings. I don't know that person by name, but I may have come across his work. I'm going to use this color to layer over top of the black because it's not a pure black. So this will help cover the paper and also lighten the black just a tiny bit. A lot of stuff going on in here. But I think this is starting to look pretty good. I'm going to grab the 940 color. Remember, we used this color yesterday on the little emblem here. I'm going to actually add this to the paint here because this is the bit of yellow green that's in the paint right here that's sort of reflecting. So I'm going to add some of this here. And then also underneath the bridge, this is the grassy part. So I'm going to use a little bit more of this. And I'll use gray as well for the grassy part. But I'm going to do something a little unique here. I'm going to reuse the 1036 color also in this grassy part, because I want to reuse this color. I want it to exist beyond just the lights, only subtly. I'm not going to add a lot to it. And then I'll tone it all down with the 947. So this will go over top of it. And now it won't look too bold, but it will subtly still exist there. And I like to do that. Help create color harmony in my drawing. I'm going to add a little bit of this up here too. And now I'm going to use the 1070 for this part down here. It's quite a bit brighter. Oh, hey there, Carrie. Oh, how is it in Poland? It's getting pretty cold, that's for sure. I haven't been outside for a while because it's so uncomfortably cold. but I do enjoy living here very much. It's gotten a, it's gotten a little bit too cold too soon this year though. But there was a couple weekends, like a week or so ago, that we had some really great fall weather. It was like all the way up to 22, but now it's now it's all downhill, I think. I don't see us getting any more sunny days for the next 6 months. It stays pretty gray. It stays almost consistently cloudy during this part of the year. I'm going to use this same color, this 1070 color, to smooth out a few of these areas in here. And then the top part up here is just a little bit brighter, so I'm going to use it here as well. Oh, that's really cool, Carrie. I'm glad to see you again. And thank you, David. Yeah, we have some lovely colors. Now I live on the top floor of my complex, and it there's 10 floors. So I have a really nice look through the landscape of southern Poland, and it's just trees everywhere, and so all of them are shades of yellow and brown and stuff. So it looks really pretty out. And the sunset is pretty close to the south. It's like southwest region of the sky. And so we get just some of the best sunsets from this height. So that's always nice. But goodness, it gets dark so quickly. It gets dark so fast. All right, I'm going to use some of the 1065 in here for some of the value changes. Very, very slight. So just a little bit darker near the bottom. This will help give the doors that curved look. Very, very light layer of this. Yeah, that's a little bit too hot for me, Ozzy. I like I like four seasons, so I never want to live someplace that is pretty much what I would consider summer year round. That would be a little bit too bland for my taste. But Poland is a little bit too north for me. It's just a little bit too far north. I wanted to use that 1070 to fill in the fence area here. And I'm going to use the white to lighten it up. Yeah, autumn and winter, two of my favorite seasons, Mima. I'm right there with you. Um, I grew up in Ohio, and I always really enjoyed the changing of seasons in Ohio because they always felt very distinct. I'm using white, by the way, to lighten up some of these areas. And the fall time, the fall time in Ohio when I was growing up always felt perfect. I loved all of the leaves. You had so many leaves, so many colors. but the weather outside it wasn't cold. It was it was perfectly chilly to the point that if you were to go out and ride bikes or play or something, you would be warm enough that you wouldn't really have to wear anything other than a t-shirt. But if you just wanted to go outside for like a nice pleasant walk or something, you just toss on a light jacket or a hoodie and you're just totally good to go. Um, and then I traded Ohio for the Pacific Northwest, Washington, and you don't really get four seasons there in Washington. You sort of get the same thing that I feel I get here in Poland. It's sort of it's either too cold to enjoy life outside, and then perfect. The summers in Washington State, at least the wet side, the western side of Washington State, are wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Oh, hey there, Teresa. Yeah, that sounds ideal. That sounds ideal for a walk. I'm gonna have to go for a walk before it gets too uncomfortable outside. I'm gonna grab my solvent now, smooth out these colors, make the back end of this car look better. Right now it's super rough looking. And I am using Zest It solvent for my blender here. And my paintbrush is a number 4 synthetic round brush. Super extra cheap, nothing special. Are there are there mountains in Serbia, Mima? I'm not really familiar at all with Serbia. I've never been there, and I don't know if I've ever really looked at pictures of Serbia. What time will I be streaming tomorrow? I'm actually not 100% sure what time I'll be streaming tomorrow. I'm most likely going to start in my morning. So I'll be streaming a little bit earlier, but I'll probably be streaming longer for tomorrow. I have the painting started. I don't know how long it will take me to finish it though, because I'll probably just stream until I finish the painting that I'm working on, which I think is number 13. No, my mistake, number 14. Yeah, number painting number 14. I was going to not start it at all, but I needed to do something in my evening yesterday. So I just sort of just worked on it for a little bit and then I got way more done than I anticipated that I would. Oh, that's cool. Do you do you do any skiing or snowboarding or anything like that? Do anything in the mountains in the wintertime? I haven't yet been able to do any of that here in Poland. Um, Mainly because the idea of traveling to a ski resort would require way too long of a bus ride for me to tolerate. What's the difference about putting white first and then darker color on top, or putting a dark color and then white on top? That's a great question. The biggest difference is that if you put dark down first and then white on top, the white will not sit on top of the dark color all that well. You won't be able to get very, depending on how dark the darker color is, you won't really be able to ever get that close to how white the colored pencil is. Whereas if you do the opposite, you can easily lay darker colors on top of the lighter colors and they will get pretty close to as dark as they would if you just put it straight on paper. So it really just depends on how bright you need to go. And in the case here where I laid down the darker color and then I used the white, I didn't need to get I didn't need to get very bright with my white color. I just needed to get the color that I applied lighter than what it was. And that's very easy to do. So that's sort of the thought process that I always take into consideration when I know I'm going to be using white in combination to a darker color. If I if I need it to be pure white or very very bright, then I will avoid that area completely because just too much trouble when it comes to colored pencils to try to get a bright area really really bright by using white to layer on top of it. That's understandable. I suppose skiing, snowboarding, not for everyone. Oh, you're welcome, Yulia. Thank you for the question. Yeah, I look forward to progressing through the blocks, John, getting to getting to work with color. But I'm really excited to finish block 1 and get into block 2 and to set up the still lifes, set up my own still lifes with the shadow box. I'm going to buy a couple more objects, I think. I bought one really cool object uh, for the projects in block 2. Not an easy subject at all, very difficult subject. Wow, that orange really pops in the what would otherwise just be green grass. But I like the color harmony that it plays on with the indicator light. Oh, Mima, I missed your comment about difficulty of drawing cars. Yeah, glad you're enjoying it. When I was a kid, cars were my main subject. Back when I was 11, I didn't get into drawing people until I was in eighth grade. 14, 15 is when I started drawing people. I was terrible at it. Oh my goodness, let me tell you. And then when when I got a little bit more comfortable drawing people, I sort of learned a few things. And what I used to do to draw people is I would take the swimsuit issue of Sports Illustrated, or no, not that. I would I don't know why I thought of that. Um, the I was thinking of swimsuits, the swimsuits from Victoria's Secret magazines, because you can sign up for, well, I don't know if you can still, but you could sign up for Victoria's Secret magazine and it was free. They would send you the catalog every month, and I mean, it's just great practice drawing, drawing people, well, drawing women anyway. Of course, when you're a 15-year-old kid, that's all you want to draw anyway. So not a whole lot has changed, to be honest with you, from that time. But uh, yeah, great references, full body poses, and all of that stuff with the swimsuits and other sportwear. So I have a lot of drawings in old sketchbooks that the poses were directly from Victoria's Secret magazines. You use what you can. That's pre. I didn't have a computer back then to look at reference photos and stuff like that, so you just grab whatever kind of reference you can get your hands on, and that was my that was my secret. That was my no pun intended. Yeah, yeah. Used it. Used it all the time. Help get poses, learn I learned a lot about doing faces too and different angles and body proportions, all of that stuff. Very helpful. Because when I was in middle school and high school, of course I took the free A and took art class, just like most people in school did. And when I was in eighth grade, I asked my art teacher how to draw people, and he gave me a muscle magazine. He just like, here, draw these people. And so all of my people pretty much through high school were just way too muscular. uh, Eventually I got a little bit better at the soft features that exist, but yeah, for some time there I was just drawing way too muscular of people. Of course, that's a little off the topic of drawing cars, but I remember I had 3 or 4 commissioned drawings when I was in the 6th grade for fellow classmates. Um, and it was drawing cars. I would draw cars for people, and they would give me their lunch money. I was hustling back in the 6th grade. Alrighty, so now you can see, now that I've smoothed that surface out, it gives context to the structure of the car, the flowing of the lines in the uneven surface, while at the same time I've eliminated the the reflection of the cars that you see in the parking lot. And because I've altered the color, you can't really distinguish what the reflection is, but it looks correct. it looks good. And that's that's because I used the information of the actual reflection in the reference to create the accurate lines that represent the surface of the car. And then I just made up the colors really while maintaining similar values. That's the other really important thing. Time to grab the black. I'm going to do the little edge on the mirror here. Some finer details for the windshield wiper. Trying to figure out where these are. Got this windshield wiper here, driving me nuts. Sort of left some of these details out. Windshield wiper. Oh, this is actually black right here too. What was my favorite car growing up? Um, my favorite, that's a good question. My favorite car growing up, uh, easily was a 67 Shelby GT 500. Because I'm still a huge fan of the Nicolas Cage movie Gone in 60 Seconds. And Eleanor is one of the most beautiful cars on the planet Earth. Um, so that was always my favorite car growing up for that reason. But when I got a little bit older, I fell in love with the Mazda RX-7, and that has remained to be my favorite car of all time. I think the rotary engine is one of the most amazing engineering feats of the late 70s, early 80s. Um, First generation RX-7, I believe, came out in 81, if I'm remembering correctly. But the uh, the rotary engine sort of never got the love that it should have to be modernized and remain relevant. But my first car was a first generation RX-7. But my favorite version of the RX-7 is the second gen. I love the body style. It has a very late 80s, early 90s body style. I've always liked the subtle boxiness plus like rounded corners. Oh, that's funny, Mima. We have a lot of we got a lot of movies in common, you and I. Yeah, I watched Gone in 60 Seconds not too long ago. I had to watch that movie again. It's such a good movie. Nicolas Cage, he's quite the character in some of his movies, but he's a master in that movie. He's fantastic in that movie. It cannot be argued. He played that part perfectly. All right, there's a line coming through right here. Let's see, I can get some of these dark shapes on the mirror here as well. So I can try to. Yeah, I agree, Rare. There's still some love for the rotary engines, but they sort of don't show up. They won't show up in new cars. I'm gonna switch colors. I'm gonna use the 1067 for pretty much the remaining dark shapes of the mirror here. Try to get those very thin white lines to create that illusion of the reflection. Yeah, I need to rewatch The Land Before Time as well. You mentioning it in your stream the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to rewatch that movie. All I can really remember about that movie is how sad it is. Like it with his mom dying. Like it just I don't know if I'm ready for it. Might bring back some childhood trauma. I'm going to use a little bit of the 1070 to lighten up some of these features on the mirror. A little bit of white. '64 Corvette with maroon interior. 64. 60. Trying to remember what the 64 looks like. Those 60 Corvettes were the really sort of futuristic ones, more rounded, softer features of the car. Okay, Rare. Well, you take care. I appreciate you coming by. Okay, dokie. Let's see what other features may I have missed. Think I think that's pretty good. I need to add the textures through here. This is like the reflection of the trees that are behind the car. I think it's best to use the 1070 for those features, but I need to sharpen this pencil, so give me one moment. Yeah, Fern Gully's a pretty good one. I rewatched I reached I rewatched Fern Gully as an adult, and it's not as good. It's not as good as I thought it was as a kid, but still a good movie. Still creepy. Fern Gully is creepy. That gross slime monster thing. Ugh. I think Brave Little Toaster, Rescuers Down Under, and Fido Goes West. Those are probably those are probably like my most memorable, aside from Land Before Time. All right, so I'm using the 1070. Got to create some of this texture stuff, texture scribbles for the reflection of the trees. I would say it's probably best not to try to replicate it fully, since the details are quite fine and it's not really possible to do it at such a small scale. So just do what you can. Precision isn't 100% required because, after all, it's the reflection of a tree and trees can look like anything. But I'm starting with a lighter color. And I'm getting the big stuff in. '77 Corvette. Oh, that's something you had? Yeah, I still wish I had my RX-7. I spent so much time working on that car when I was in high school. The air intake up here, I also need to finish up. I know that these reflection thingies kind of come out over here as well. A few little parts of the tree, breaking up the highlights. Jump over here and do some of it. Quite a lot actually throughout this part. Oh, hey there, Skywings. Thank you. All right, I'm going to switch now to the 1065. This is going to match the paint color a little bit more. So some of the darker areas of the tree reflection. Sort of keeping it slightly simplified, because I think I still get the same effect. I just I don't run the risk of sort of overdoing it. That's something that I want to avoid at all costs. I don't want to add too much of this texture in there that it sort of distorts the overall drawing. Oh, that sounds cool, Diane. Yeah, restoring a car is something that I always wanted to do. I mean, it was pretty much what my dad did as a living. But he never worked for his own garage, really. He always worked for somebody else, so he never got to restore the cars that he dreamed of restoring. But I was surrounded by cars my entire life in terms of painting and working on them. And I worked on mini cars with my dad growing up. I mean, um, part of my part of my art persona here on YouTube, the name Unmask Art is derived from the use of masking tape, a skill that I learned from my dad growing up painting cars, because the precision to tape off a car to prep it for paint is is a very tedious skill. And my dad taught me how to do it when I was 6 years old. And so removing masking tape and laying down masking tape with that level of precision, uh, sort of a small part of what influences my YouTube channel name. And that's why my logo has the masking tape over the eyes. Okay, I'm going to use solvent to smooth out these features. And then I think I'm ready to call it a day after I smooth these features out. So if you have any last minute questions before I go, don't wait too long because I'll be gone. But I will be back tomorrow, be doing an oil painting. As part of my continued process through the Evolve curriculum. Oh, that's funny, Cherry. No, it's understandable. Not everybody is that into cars. I I'm not really that into cars anymore. It's not something that I spend a lot of my time on or anything, but or when we're one skill that I've developed that I was always a little impressed by my dad when I was a kid and we were just driving down the road or whatever, I would point to a car and be like, "Dad, what kind of car is that?" And he'd tell me the name and the potential year and all of that. And I just felt like I could point at any car and he would know something about it, whether it was the make, model, and year or something else specific about it. And now my wife does that to me because I recognize over the years I've just sort of not really consciously, sort of just subconsciously built a library of make, model, and year. And so now, like when my wife and I are on the bus or something or walking, she'll just point to a car and she'll ask me, "What kind of car is that?" And unless it is some kind of weird Euro car that I've never seen my entire life, I will almost always be able to tell her make, model, and year of particular car. Thank you, Yulia. Yes, you have a lovely day as well, Mima. And for everyone tuning in, go check out Mima's live stream. It will be up probably in a couple hours or whatnot, but be sure to go over to her channel and give her a subscribe. I'll probably be tuning in to her live stream later, so you'll find me in the chat most likely. But I think that's going to do it for today. Let me just zoom out and give you guys a better look at the car here. Um, so the last few things that need to take place with this car is obviously the headlights. So the headlights I will do next week. I also need to do the mirror and I need to do the interior windows a little bit, change the color. So as far as things that I haven't touched at all, those few details I need to obviously fill in. And so my plan is to do all of that next Wednesday. And then on Thursday next week, I want to add one or two other colors to my palette. And I'm going to tone the paint job to make it a little less just flat gray. And not sure what I'll add to it, but yeah. But I really, really like the way this is coming out, and I like the that I used that orange there. I really I wasn't sure about it at first, but now I really love the way that orange plays off the indicator lights. Anyways, thank you guys so much for coming by and hanging out. I really appreciate it. The time for tomorrow's stream, I'm not 100% sure, but I am going to schedule it out soon. I'll schedule it out, so just be on the lookout for the notification or whatever, because it will be at a different time most likely. Anyways, thanks again. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care. Peace.